So the tier list we're making is going to be a lightsaber duels tier list, and I've picked many of the ones that you see in live action, and some video game ones, not a ton. Um, some cartoon ones, not a ton. Obviously, there's a million of these quote can be considered duels. I probably forgot one or two, so I apologize, but I tried to at least get all the ones that are really easy to access, all the way up to Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew didn't really have one. I just figured honorable mention to Jod for bringing out that lightsaber. It was a cool moment. But we're gonna rank them as always. Starting at the top, our S tier is you uh, enrich the franchise. You're a staple legacy. Um, Reason why the franchise moves on type of deal. Um, for the lightsaber duels specifically, I took into account music, the actual fight scene itself, the gravity at which it was, like what the stakes were, um, kind of what it meant at the time of the premiere of the movie too was a big one because obviously as you we get better choreography and stuff, some of the duels are going to be visually more impressive than others. But I took that into account too, based on like time limitations because they're obviously almost 50 years apart now. Um, and then like the hype up to it versus and like where it ended up versus where it finished and like in reality. So I'll try to make that more sense when I'm talking about it. But like if we were building up a big fight and you had all these expectations, did they meet that criteria? Music's going to be a big one for some of them. And it doesn't, if you're not fighting for the fate of the galaxy, it doesn't mean you're not S tier in this either. But so there's a lot of little factors, and I'll try to explain it for each one. A tier, again, you're not as epic, but you're solid. You added nothing but hype. People can't wait to watch it again. B is like good fight. You added something to the franchise. People look forward to seeing that fight again. It was okay though. Like it could have been better. C is like, well, it happened. Um, didn't hurt anything, didn't help anything. It just kind of occurred. It was a cool little clash of sabers and that sort of stuff. D tier is the fight actually was bad and um, potentially hurt the franchise in some way. Maybe it didn't quite meet expectations and or was filmed weird, that sort of thing. E tier does not exist, so let's just change that to uh, we'll change this to F, and then we'll go with incomplete maybe down here or not sure. I'm gonna have an opinion on almost all of these, but there's one in particular that I kind of feel like deserves to be in the incomplete and not be judged separately. But we'll get to that. Anyway, we're just gonna pick a random one here to start. So let's go to um okay, Rey and Kylo in the snow. Um Visually amazing. Some great music for sure. So initially, you want to go to B tier. Rey winning against even an injured Kylo is preposterous to me. Um, she knows how to fight, but she's her winning this was like shocking, and I think it kind of crapped on another one that's going to end up in I think in our incomplete. So we'll go over that one here in a second, but I'm going to leave it as a C plus to B minus, um, because the music was epic when it came on, and the visual of the snow and the sabers clashing was fantastic. I actually am a really big fan of the crossguard lightsaber. I know a lot of people aren't, but I thought that was a pretty cool idea. Um, they made up a bunch of bullshit to make it a reason why they made it look like a sword. It was just Disney trying to sell a different product. But it worked on me. I was like, "Ooh, cool sword." Um, I'm gonna leave it top of C for now. It might bump up to B minus. We'll see. It every time I think about it though, it always makes me think about the wasted potential of this next one. And this is our incomplete one. Um, Kylo versus Finn. Same fight. I don't know why they made two different images, whoever created this one. I'm going to leave it as an incomplete. This is what I was very interested in. The story for Finn was compelling and very, very interesting. And I wanted to see it fleshed out. And I really like the idea of a dude just picking up a saber to fight, maybe a little force sensitive PTSD stormtrooper, and where this was going to go. And I was on the edge of my seat when he lit up to go take on Kylo, and having Rey just kind of swoop in and save the day and just be overpowered, right off the rip was she should have lost that fight. That would have been a really good start to her humbling herself to go find Luke and be like, I don't know why I feel compelled to follow this and why I feel a connection to you, but I need to learn from you so I can beat Kylo. Instead, she just whomps him right off the rip. Even an injured Sith Lord would still destroy an untrained Padawan. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This guy could literally, like an hour earlier in this fight, hold her still in the woods, and she could not move. She was just completely paralyzed. So definitely incomplete. This next one I see, picture doesn't match, but it's Qui-Gon versus Maul. I think they actually meant to do the desert fight for this. If this was the desert fight, I'd put this down here in incomplete as well because it's literally part of a different fight. So we're gonna call this part of the Duel of the Fates where Qui-Gon and Maul fight. It is excellent. It is edge of your seat stuff. Um, it really establishes Maul as a credible threat because he just slaughters Obi-Wan through wearing him down, or Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon right in front of Obi-Wan, and the ray shields separating them was a great little like, oh no, he's isolated moment. I'll put it in the B tier. Um, it is part of a larger fight, which will probably be S tier, but that small portion of the fight for the Duel of the Fates versus Qui-Gon and Maul. And I'll even establish like the part before where you kind of get a little taste of their sabers clashing for half a second on Tatooine was good. It got you kind of your palate wet that like, okay, this is a Sith Lord, and then you got to establish the Sith Lord's dominance. Now I would have preferred if Maul would have ended up winning the fight overall. Um, Obi-Wan versus Grievous. It was cool. It was better, I think, than the Kylo Rey fight. Um, it was just cool to see Grievous finally in live action, but they didn't really make him as intimidating as he was in the cartoon, um, or as I pictured him in the book. I think that fight could have been way better. Um, it just kind of it's something that's kind of cool, but it ends with a little different. I'd suppose B minus is fine. I don't think it's as good as Qui-Gon and Maul fighting. I think it's better than it's something I look forward to watching, but it's also pretty short. It's interrupted a lot by the scenes, the choreography because of the CG. It's not as cool. Um, I'll just go in order from here on just to keep the flow going so I don't keep having to just grab one that catches my attention. This one, the circle is now complete. The battle from Luke and Vader on Cloud City, I truly think is going to be our first S tier here. Um, for such limitations at the time, it is absolutely gorgeous. It is edge of your seat, built up for 2 movies straight, basically, that this is going to happen. Luke losing, Luke trying to kill himself, basically, rather than acknowledge, the major thing that he might be like his father, and fall, is epic. The bad guys just truly win and walk away from this. The gravity of this is felt in cinema history for forever, and it's still just gorgeous when you rewatch it. Is it the best choreography? No. Um, for the time, it was great, but obviously, when you compare people skipping around now, this is probably something that if they redid now could be epic proportions with, the Luke and Vader's powers coming to a clash. But, back then this was like holy shit, jaw-dropping moment when they clash. Um oh, also on this list, I don't think I have him in there, but there's a bunch with the dark saber with Mando and stuff where he clashed. They're all cool, but it's not like two force users kind of going at it. The dark saber has its moments here and there. I maybe think maybe one got in here. I'm not sure. I'll take a look though. But that's one I just kind of decided to leave off because they're just kind of free swinging that saber around. It's not really these guys fighting. We got, it looks like Dooku. It's kind of hard to see some of these pictures. Dooku versus Obi-Wan and Anakin, and it looks like this is the one that's on the ship on Revenge of the Sith, where Obi-Wan kind of gets destroyed here, um, which was a weird choice. This is one to me, I'm gonna put in C. It was cool to see Anakin go a little dark. It didn't really feel that it deserved its um, dark side scene. It was kind of, it was weird. Like even when Ian McDermott at the end goes, "Kill him," it was laughable, delivery of the line because of the way it was written and the way that the things took place, and they didn't show you Dooku's thought process. If you read the book, Dooku, it's shown from Dooku's point of view, and it's like it's a compilation of him setting up Anakin for his fall for the Emperor, and then realizing that he's been a pawn for years. Last minute, everything comes crashing down right before he gets executed, and it's executed so well in the book, and in the movie it was just fine. It was cool. It's something you like to watch. There's some famous lines in there where they talk shit, and it's memed on, and for forever. But I don't think, I'm gonna put it at top of C. It's definitely better than Kylo and Rey. I don't think it's as good as either of these two, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, or Grievous and Maul. It could have been done just so much better. This is a controversial one. Um, this is Luke versus Kylo Ren on the salt fields. Um, I'm gonna go D, just because the actual gravity moment of Luke staring down those walkers and Kylo losing his shit and going like, more, and just piling on all those lasers at him, and then him going out there and like the little sliding and the sand coming up in the air, or the salt coming up in there, was cool. But the in general, man, the whole him not actually being there thing and meditating from afar was just such a big fucking disaster. It's one of those parts in that movie that you could rewatch, but it's just so disappointing. It was really bad, and the choice to make him um, die there was an F choice. But visually, and Luke staring down on those things, and you thinking Luke doing that for half a minute, is basically why it's just hovering above F, and not in and in the bottom of the D tier here. Duel of the Fates. This is an S tier, and it's actually, I think, the greatest lightsaber fight in Star Wars history. Um, the combination of the choreography, the music, Maul versus two Jedi legends, um, is incredible. If it had ended the way that I wanted it to end, which is Maul just escapes after killing Qui-Gon and maybe, him and Obi-Wan get into a standstill and he leaves type of thing, or escapes somehow because the bad guy gets away. And then they had Maul as the bad guy going into Attack of the Clones. I think would have been better than bringing in Dooku, but everyone loves Dooku, so apparently both sides were okay. This is by far the best and most rewatched lightsaber fight of all time because it has that combination of we hadn't had Star Wars in forever. It was our first lightsaber battle back. It was epic. It was different. We had the double bladed. We had Maul flipping around, really showing off those Jedi powers that they couldn't show in the 70s, and early 80s. So it still holds up. Like when you watch it now, you're like, damn, they were showing off Jedi leaps, all that stuff, and we had some deaths. It's fantastic, fantastic. Probably the one I would rewatch the most out of all these. Nothing but good things to say about that one. We got Luke and Vader in the Death Star throne room. Um, the fight itself was not very good. The gravity of it was huge. Um, it's very iconic. I'm gonna put it in A tier. I think it's better than the Qui-Gon Maul little mini fight, and the gravity of just Vader and Luke fighting in front of the Emperor for Luke's soul, basically, and for Vader's soul and redemption is one of the biggest um, epic moments in Star Wars history. So, what can you say? And the music is fantastic during that too. The throne room fight, oh my god. Um, Vader versus Ahsoka in Rebels. This had the potential to be one of the greatest lightsaber fights of all time. It definitely just got interrupted and got in its own way through weird time travel. I'm gonna put it in B because it was so epic when it starts, and you're like, oh my god, Vader and Ahsoka are squaring off on Malachor. Like, what is gonna happen here? And then it was when you see him get cut open and you see that eye again, they overuse that. By the way. It's really cool to see Vader battle damage and you see both, but because they did it in cartoon, it kind of devalued it from the show. But they don't actually finish the fight; it just gets interrupted, and then spoiler alert, later on, Ezra takes her to the world between worlds and pulls her out of that fight, and then Vader just limps away. Um, it was a chance to show us something epic, and honestly, I I think that would have been a perfect time to have Vader kill Ahsoka and just end that ender story there. It would have been a good final thing for Vader to do so. I think that's very controversial though, and I like Ahsoka, especially like the TV show and stuff. So I like where they're going with stuff, but I think that would have a good death for her and a good way to kind of write her out as a problem in future stories because her existing and not doing stuff for the Jedi is just kind of weird. Um, and they had to figure out how to fit her into Luke's storyline and all this stuff. Where if she died there at Malachor, it would have just wrapped up and no loose ends type of thing. So I think in general, I think that would have been a safer play. Another Rebels. The hell's this next one? Oh, Rebels. Okay. This is Maul versus Obi-Wan in the desert. Um, the more that I hear people talk about this one, the more I like it. I'm gonna put it top of B for artistry. The actual fight is hot trash. And when I first saw it, I was so disappointed. I was like, what just happened? Because you're waiting for it for so long. But then when you see the reasons why they did it and the build up and the tribute to um I think it was like Ronin Japanese movies and Ronin movies. Uh, a specific, I think it's Kurosawa. I can't remember. Um, whoever choreographed the fight and designed the fight and the feel of it was a very Japanese Ronin samurai type of build to it, and it's gorgeous. And when you have someone explain it to you, you're like, oh, that's great. As a Star Wars fan, when I first watched, I was like, Maul Obi-Wan, Maul Obi-Wan, and it's over. What the hell? You couldn't give him like 5 minutes to just trade some blows there, here, and there. But the more that I look at it from an artist point of view, it's actually really, really well done. Um, and then character-wise too, it's great. Great conclusion. Just sad, um, and kind of makes no sense now why. Well, no, I guess he can be around in Crimson Dawn. It just kind of limits his future story potential. They just keep trying to kill Maul. I don't know why. Like they just keep offing him left and right. He's one of those that they could have kept alive for a while, and he could have carried a franchise for a little bit. He's clearly insanely popular. This one is Dooku, an Attack of the Clones versus Obi-Wan and Anakin. This one was all right. Um, it really establishes Dooku as a credible threat, but you're also like, I remember when I first watched it, I'm like, who is this guy? Why is he able to do all this? Where did he come from? How, like there was no backstory at the time that they did it. Um, it is better than the other Dooku fight, so I'm thinking top of C. Um, he does wound Anakin, which was cool. Kind of establishes him a threat, but it's just not very well done. The lighting was cool when they knocked out the power. Felt really unnecessary. Like you're like, it'd be cool if you guys were fighting, you accidentally cut these cables right here and it cut all the power, and then everything was super shiny. Um, but it showed off Dooku's dueling abilities. So it's something, like you get excited for that hangar fight, and that's just kind of the prelude to the bigger fight that's coming. We got Mace versus the Emperor. Now this one was actually pretty well done. They just needed to do it a little bit better. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the top of C as well, just because it could have been like something positive in the movie, but it ended up just looking really bad. The initial fight when he brings the three Jedi to arrest him could have looked so much better as described in the book. Um, Obviously, it's a little tough, and they actually, if you watch there's a YouTube video of like the actual film that they were going to use or the actual scene they were going to use, um, and choreography, and it looks so much better. And then the day of, they're like, Ian should do this, and then Ian's like, what? And like they were super limited with the stunt performance because of that. But the ending is the part that I have the problem with. They didn't really do a great job explaining why Mace's powers are so effective against the Emperor, and the Emperor really seeing the moment to convert Vader by pretending to be feeble. Um, wasn't really well done. But in general, it was a good fight. Um, it was leaning towards being a very positive influence, and then it ended up just kind of meandering towards the middle. Uh, Another epic one, but I don't think it's S tier now that when you rewatch it, but it was the very first one, and I think it belongs right here in low end of A. Um, Big time, first ever lightsaber duel, really grips your attention, but it's limited by the fact that it's two old men in costumes doing it, and it has some great gravity for their story and where it's going, and great foresight for where they were going with the story. Um, but it's two old men like twirling sabers like this. Like obviously they learned a lot, just even between the first two films and the third film of how to make this more interesting looking. Um, but it's still in the history of everything. Obi-Wan versus Vader every time they pick up a stick, um, is incredibly important, and Alec Guinness deserves for his sacrifice alone at the end of this to be up here. Dooku Yoda. This is one too that is great. To see Yoda spinning around for the first time, you really get that high end power. I will put it at the top of B. A lot of people don't like it because it's a CG Yoda just flailing around, but it really like dropped my jaw, dropped my jaw because you've been waiting to see what Yoda can do. Why is he the Jedi Master, and all that stuff, and and everyone kept alluding to like you're almost as good as Yoda, and they're like, really, I'm not that good. And then you see him go off, and you're like, oh shit. He manhandled Dooku, who just uh, shit on Obi-Wan and Anakin at the same time. Uh, Vader versus Kanan and Ezra. Um, I'm gonna go low end of C here. Um, it's just when it when it happens, you're like, oh shit, they're actually gonna square off with Vader. I'm glad that Vader just toys with them, basically, and but he can't really close the deal because these are two main characters in the story. Um, but I was like, if they defeat Vader, this needs to get the hell out of here. So basically, they were fighting for to get Vader some screen time and show him being intimidating, but they didn't quite pull it off. It's not as beautiful, and the music is not anywhere near these live action ones. So it's just kind of there. It didn't hurt anything. It didn't help anything. Ooh, another S tier. Battle of Heroes. Anakin versus Obi-Wan. The music is incredible. It's arguably the greatest lightsaber fight of all time, so it's definitely S tier. I honestly think, to me, I would rather watch this one with the one on Cloud City over the Battle of Heroes. The Battle of Heroes music is incredible. The fighting for the fate of the galaxy is incredible. The choreographed fighting is, you know what? No, I would rather watch if I had to just choose one to put on. These are like neck and neck to me for gravity, but I think this one, the Battle of Heroes, the choreograph effort that they put into it alone, I think deserves to be bumped up. Those two actors went all out to give us the most visual show ever. The only thing preventing it from being above Duel of the Fates to me is the ending of the fight was not very well thought out. Um, and all they had to do was not narrate the ending. They could have just had Obi-Wan jump over to the sand or the hill, and then instead of saying, it's over, I win, all he had to do was sit there and like get ready to have him jump up and then just make that move. And people would have been like, oh shit. And then when they would have diagnosed, they'd have been like, yeah, he kind of baited Anakin to having to make a leap after him and took advantage of it. But instead of him saying it out loud, it's like, okay, well, if you tell me your strategy, I'm not going to just jump right into it. I think that's the only thing that held it back. Everything else was phenomenal. Speaking of Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan versus the Emperor. This was also very good, poorly executed, but had a lot of stakes to it, and visually was fun to see. It is better than Dooku Yoda, so I'll put it in the high B here. Um, it was an oh shit moment, but I I wanted to see the Emperor be even more dominant because it kind of made Yoda look like a bitch in the movie, and he just walked away from him. Ooh, Anakin Ahsoka in the world between worlds. Let's see here. This was beautiful and fun to watch. I want to put it more in the incomplete because they weren't actually fighting. This was a training um, scene. I will put it right here with the Maul Obi-Wan final stand in that it was gorgeous. I love to rewatch it. It was great setting. Everything they did in that episode was like that was an S tier episode of Ahsoka, and the reason why that we love having Star Wars back in live action. But it was just very cool visually, and there was no stakes. It was Anakin teaching Ahsoka, basically. What the hell is this? Oh, another Ahsoka. Balin versus Ahsoka. I really, really liked this fight. I think it's I think it's gonna go here. I think it's gonna go bottom of A tier, maybe top of B. Um, I genuinely liked that uh, Balin won and talked shit and told her why she was losing, and it forces this next, the one we just talked about, the World Between Worlds confrontation. It basically turns, it's like her Balrog. She turns to Ahsoka the White after losing to the Balrog, and um, she just got beat by a better swordsman, and she's not practicing, and he is, and it made sense, and he just straight up beat her, and I was pleasantly surprised that they went with that story direction and established Balin as a badass. Um, Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. I wish he would be coming back because his character was phenomenal. I enjoyed that fight quite a bit. It's more recent, so maybe that's why I'm liking it more than some of the rest. But um, I felt like it was well done and it exceeded my expectations. Our first video game fight here. We've only got maybe 15 more. First video game fight. We've got a few from Jedi Survivor here, so we'll just riddle them off. Cal versus Bode. I was very underwhelmed by this fight. Um, Visually, all these video game fights are pretty fucking sick. Obviously, because they're not limited by a whole lot. I'm gonna put it above the Kanan and Ezra fight versus Vader, but it's still not as good as any of the real live action ones. It's a cool fight, and Bode is an interesting Jedi because he uses a blaster, but he's just not a good bad guy compared to the first games. The bad guy just I wasn't shocked by his betrayal or anything like that, and I was suspicious of him the whole fucking time. So like it didn't really like rock my world that we had to fight him at the end. And it was kind of a weird fight. Like he didn't need to fight. He could have just left with his daughter or stayed there. Like it felt unnecessary. And then the plot of it too, Cal kills him in front of his daughter, and then his daughter's like, "Well, I understand." And you're like, "Bro, no, that would be like lifetime revenge stuff." Same game, Cal versus Dagon. This is actually better than Bode, but again, I can't really put it even above Rey and Kylo because it was just like a middle of the game fight. Him versus a High Republic Jedi with one arm was really unique and original, and I genuinely thought he was going to be the boss of the game. I thought he was a more interesting fight than Bode, um, and he should have been more powerful. But it was just a middle of the game fight, boss type of like you thought you beat the boss, but actually he was the boss type of thing. It was visually cool to watch, but it was all these guys are just overpowered because it's a video game. This one though, my first F tier lightsaber fight, um, Seer versus Vader, I genuinely think was the stupidest. It took me out of the game to play as Seer. I wanted to just be Cal, but you have to be Seer for a little bit, and then see suddenly after I think it's been 3 years, is back to being like Jedi monk master status from being like trash garbage that got tossed, literally tossed by Vader into a pit, and somehow like Palpatine she returned. Um, she she damaging and almost killing Vader is a freaking sin, and whoever decided that you need to rethink your Star Wars knowledge because they literally just plucked her out of nowhere and decided to make her like amazing. And the entire time I was just cringing, waiting for that fight to be over, and I couldn't wait for her to be killed. And they really had an opportunity to still establish Vader as a badass and they really kind of took him down a peg, which was by giving her, for no reason, a chance in that fight. There was there was no reason for that. Having her be like a little bit better and at least be able to hold her ground this time would have made sense, and not just get yeeted right away. But there's no way that in 3 years Vader lost that much ability. It was kind of like Kylo versus Rey in the snow, where you're like, there's no chance, and then she almost kills him, and you're like, what the fuck? Ooh, this is a good one. Clone Wars: Sidious versus Maul and Savage. This fight was badass. And I apologize if Call's watching this. Seeing Sidious just absolutely dominate these two really, really established him as a badass. It was a jaw-dropping moment to see in Clone Wars cartoon. I genuinely think uh, it's a really fun fight to just watch those two, all those red sabers going around, and then you've got like the most powerful Sith just squaring off, and he toys with them. Um, I think it's actually belongs right here. It's better than Balin and Ahsoka, but the only thing holding it back is if it was live action, man, it would probably be up here next year. Um, the only thing that's holding back, but him strolling off that ship, that Emperor music playing, and you're like, is he gonna swing? And he toys with them, murders Savage, toys with Maul, and then goes, you're still gonna survive and help me. Maul even begs for mercy. I mean, like he got taken down a peg right there by Sidious, just absolute being a badass. Who our first acolyte one. Um, this is Kilnaka's fight. Versus the Jedi, where his mind is taken over. It's also F tier. I don't think it's quite as harmful as this one. It was visually really cool to see a Wookiee fighting with a lightsaber. Everything else about this fight, though, made no sense. Dude's neck would have snapped at one point when he had him up against the wall, and I thought that's where they were going with it, and they didn't do it. Um, there was just a lot that didn't add up storyline wise here, and the fact that this lady could just take over a Jedi Master Kilnaka's mind is wild to me, and control his body. It's just absolutely wild to me, and they never explained how or why she was able to do that. It was just a cringy fight that everyone made fun of afterwards. We have Vader versus Obi-Wan in the show. This was actually visually amazing and really fun to watch. The fight itself, though, had way more like rocks being thrown at each other. I'm gonna put high end of B for just the anticipation of it and the music. And if you include the build up from the previous scene where Vader just snaps some random dude's neck in the street just to pull Obi-Wan out of hiding, and the darkness of the show really brought out the vibrancy of the lightsabers. The lightsaber fighting itself was a little clumsier on Obi-Wan, but this part was really cool. It could have been better, but it was great to see. Um, I if I'm rewatching that show, I'm fast forwarding through everything until it gets to any Vader Obi-Wan parts. For that alone, we have Soul versus Chimera. Well, it looks like I got a repeat one here, so I'll just ignore that one. I'll put that in incomplete. That's Obi-Wan and Maul again. Soul versus Chimera. I'm gonna go D. Um, yeah, right here, right below, no, right above Kylo and Luke. Visually cool. Kylo and Chimera really deserved a lot more. Their little face-offs were great, but obviously the gravity of this was really stupid by the time it was over. The plot just fell apart at this point, and they kept mixing in weird um, filmography like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon stuff where they were like floating for no reason and saying like they weren't even saying that they were floating for visual, um, visually for cinematic reasons, they literally just explained it like, oh, they used the force to float. And you're like, no, they didn't. And if everyone could do that, then all these people that would have been tossed in the pit wouldn't have died. So, yeah, you guys are opening up a can of worms here, with these masters floating all over the place. Um, Choreography wise, great. Um, Visually, great. Music, story, shit. And that's really why it got a lower score. Is the story bringing it down? Just it made it worse than the video game ones because at least the story one was good. Like it was there. There was a story. It made sense. This made no sense. When by the time it got to the end, it was just people flipping, flopping all over the place, and then he dies, getting force choked to death by his apprentice without resisting. It's just the whole thing was very odd. Now this one, also from the same show, just to show you don't just hate on the show completely. This was Chimera versus like 9 Jedi, which was incredible to watch. It is better than watching Obi-Wan versus Kenobi. Um, just to see the badassness of the lightsaber fight, the cortosis being used, Chimera being brutal with his killing. And then they just had an entire episode of him establishing himself for this, and then it just fell off a friggin' the story just right after this episode just nosedived off a cliff. It felt like they just used all their gas here. And now, does it make sense that he can fight 9 Jedi? No. Does it make sense that he, got a few of them with the cortosis? Yeah. It was really cool that he did that. It was very confusing, but he fought 9 Jedi at the same time. He's dead. Try to fight 9 school kids at the same time. You're not going to win. You're surrounded. Like eventually you just get overwhelmed. So all they had to do was just circle and go, dead. You know, it's not, no matter how good he is, but he had little tricks here and there that were awesome. Where like the secret hidden lightsaber, like a dagger inside of a blade, the triple stab, putting sabers to people's throats, um, headbutting the lightsaber, which when I first saw and I didn't know what cortosis was, I was like, huh? I was like, what the fuck? It took me a minute to realize what was happening because I'd never read the High Republic stuff, so I'd never heard of cortosis. So once it was explained and I rewatched, I was like, okay, that makes more sense. But during it, I was like, what? And Leslie Headland did not do a good job promoting this because she came out and said it was the best lightsaber fight of all time. It's gonna be better than Duel of the Fates. Like word for word, posted that before the episode aired. And so everybody was like, okay, I'm down. And then we watched it and we're like, no, it wasn't. It really was not. Like visually and choreography, sure. But did it make sense? Was the stakes there? No. Music wasn't that great. Um, they kept interrupting it with stupid shit like OSHA running around with moths. And then he loses to the fucking critters at the end of the day. Like it could have been a lot cooler. Again, just have the bad guy win and leave. Like I don't know why it's always got to be this one back. Ooh, Riva Vader. Um, it's definitely F, but I'm gonna propel it to D because Vader toys with her, and I love to see Vader toying with people. I want to put an F because somehow Riva survives being stabbed 3 times in this show. Twice by Vader, once by the High Inquisitor survives being stabbed by Riva. So in the show, basically lightsaber wound means nothing. You're fine. But seeing Vader toy with her was great, but the audacity of her to think she could challenge Vader was where I started like vomiting in my mouth. And I was like, you're really going to take the focus off of Obi-Wan and Vader meeting up right now. for Reva and Vader to have a moment. Like, are you kidding me? Um, but her surviving somehow and still being a problem when she should have died right there and then closed the story. And like, if she died there, I'd probably put her at a C because it establishes Vader's badassness, but like it was unnecessary type of thing. But bringing her back is just like, what are you thinking? It's not even like a well done fight. It's just Vader one handed toying with her. Um, it wasn't like he was just messing around. It was great. And then she gets like a few swings in. That's where this is where Seer should have been right here. If she just got kind of toyed with, I think that would have bumped that one up to a D. Oh, Revan versus Malik. Now visually, this is obviously shit because it's an old Xbox game. Impact wise, it's one of my favorites of all time. I can't put it consciously above any of these other visual ones, but just the gravity of it, I'll put it in mid B here. Malik, when you go into that Starforge throne room and you go toe to toe with your old apprentice in probably the best Star Wars game of all time, um, is an epic moment. It's really, really good. Um, Visually, it could be amazing if they ever get the remake done. And I can bump it up the tier list here, but I can't put it above any of these other live action moments that are like epic. But some animated ones I could. Rey versus the Emperor was really bad. Um, I think this actually hurt the franchise by existing. Um, Visually, so I want to start it off like here, like top of D, but visually it was great. Um, Power level wise, it was epic because of how much that's on there. I'll put it above Kanan. I'd watch it above Kanan. I'd watch it above these guys. I don't think it's as good as the Force Awakens duel. Um, it was I genuinely think just the whole show really sucked, or the whole sequel series really sucked, and that being the ultimate battle was a really dumb way for it to end. I'm all the Sith. Well, I'm all the Jedi. I win. Was just kind of like, okay, guys, sure. Now we're just channeling all the power in the universe at once. Okay. Really didn't think this one through, did you? Speaking of not thinking it through, the throne room fight with Kylo and Rey. Um, it was actually more entertaining than the final fight, but it wasn't as good as the forest battle one. The setting was cool. The waves crashing and stuff was cool. Kylo won that fucking fight, and then Rey just stabs him, and instead of realizing that he'd stopped fighting, it was very weird. Um, and it kind of showed that Rey should have been falling towards the dark side because she was willing to murder when she saw the opportunity, when he'd clearly stopped fighting. What is this music? It's supposed to be Star Wars stuff. I'm curious what they named it. This is NRG7. Rick Rubin. There we go. That's better. And last but not least, for our tier list here, we have Cal versus Trilla. Now, I actually think this was the coolest fight in um, this game. And it ends with Vader coming in and stomping people and having a really cool end to that fight. It is actually something I prefer to watch over these ones. I think I'd still rather watch Dooku versus Anakin over it because it's a video game, but it's actually a really cool fight. An Inquisitor versus a Jedi. She's pretty powerful and a pretty cool Inquisitor character. Had a good story in the first game, really well thought out. And Vader coming in at the end and just establishing dominance was really cool. Was by far the best moment of that game. All right, there you have it. We have our tier list. It's all set. I did it in less than an hour. Holy shit. Um, so we got the worst of all time, Seer and Vader, and the Captain or the Kilnaka fight. A lot of Obi-Wan and new Disney stuff here in the DNF tier, unfortunately, again. You'll notice there are no original trilogy or prequel lightsaber fights that ended up down here. It's only Disney that keeps failing at making lightsabers cool, which is impressive. It's really impressive to be able to do that. Um, let's see, what's the highest Disney fight on my list here? Ahsoka versus Balin Skull, and then I'll put the acolyte one in there too. They need to just start taking notes on what works and what doesn't, man. Like original trilogy smashes a lot of the even with the old like concept fighting, just the Luke versus Vader gravity of it and all that stuff. But you can see we can be swayed by slashing and flipping and powers on display because our top two are Duel of the Fates and Battle of Heroes, with the circle being a close. They're like 1A, 1B, and then we got right behind it. The circle is now complete in S tier. There's a lot of cool fights in canon, in Legends, that I did not cover. And there's obviously a lot in video games with like Star Killer and that sort of stuff, which I did not cover because I didn't play a lot of them. And some of them I just don't consider fights. Like one of the cooler fights I remember was Nihilus and Scion versus Traya, where they just pinned her against the wall and cast her out as master, just overwhelmed her. Thought that was cool, but it's a video game. You don't really get to see a whole lot. Nihilus's final fight on the bridge against Sutra, uh, Mira Sutric, and Canderous was really cool. Bastila, when you meet her at the top of the Jedi Temple, awesome. But it's in a video game. It's really hard to really kind of rank those, especially since they don't visually have the same impact as movies and TVs to show them, at least back then when they made them. Um, but let me know what you think. Um, and for now, we will move to um, going to Sea of Thieves here shortly. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know what you disagree with and you think should be ranked higher or lower, and why. And then if I missed any, please let me know. Um, again, there's so many of them to choose from. But thank you for watching.